The following BLTV program is brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Please enjoy.
Thanks for listening to the OnPurpose Growth podcast. Let us know what you thought in the comment section. For more from OnPurpose Growth, go to onpurposegrowth.com. Subscribe here at BLTV for all of our content, including the daily Learn About Law podcast, Seize Your Business, Making Real Estate Fun, and Logical Logistics podcast, brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. All right, thanks for listening.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of the Seize Your Business podcast. And today I've got Ken Wentworth of Mr. Biz Solutions on with me, and he's going to be telling you more about his business. But I'm excited because today what we're going to be talking about is, as a business owner, what should you be paying attention going into 2021 based on what's going on with the election that we just had and the political environment, because things are changing and you need to pay attention. So Ken, I appreciate you being on, and why don't you give a little background of yourself and your business for everybody before we dive in?
Yeah, first of all, Brian, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to the Seize Your Business podcast folks. Again, Ken Wentworth, I worked in the corporate world at a Fortune 15 company, rose to the top 3%, and decided I could make a bigger impact elsewhere, and left that career. Didn't even know what I was going to do next. Left and kind of figured out along the way what that was. And in the meantime, I have my own radio show, Mr. Biz Radio, which now we're 4 years into that, and it airs for 40 hours a week now. It's been absolutely crazy, the growth we've had. And then I've written 2 best-selling books, How to Be a Cash Flow Pro, Pathway to Profits. In short, the way I phrase it is I help business owners operate their businesses more profitably, more efficiently. As an on-demand CFO, part-time CFO, go in and help them, figure out not only the financial side, but the overall view. And sometimes we as business owners get stuck in the weeds, right? And it's hard to really pick your head up out of those weeds and think in a more strategic, from a strategic vantage point. And that's one of the things that I can help with, especially, as a CFO type of a resource.
Well, this is helpful, and I appreciate you explain that, because what we're talking about today is not getting in the weeds of who specifically got elected or anything like that, but how can we strategically think about what's going on and how that affects a business owner going into 2021. So I'm eager to learn, what you feel and what you think, because you definitely got the seasoned background to understand.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I think at this stage, a big piece of this, and again, I don't want to get too far on the political side of it, but I think it's important to understand sort of some of the checks and balances and the levers that are in place. Is I think a really key aspect will be the runoff for the Georgia Senate seats, because that's going to determine who controls the Senate. And I think that's critically important, because that could shift how we need to sort of bob and weave with this, because as everyone knows, in the United States, the Democrats control the Congress, the House. And if they also control the Senate, and then obviously with a Democratic White House, they've got everything, right? And so they got the majority and all. So it's going to be much easier for them to be able to pass the things that they want to pass through without probably much chance of any sort of disruption to that. That being said, it seems, or the last I read at least, it seems that the likelihood is, and again, we know how accurate polls are from the 2016 presidential election and this one, as a matter of fact. So who knows? But the last I've seen, it appears as though the Republicans will remain in control of the Senate, which I think is actually a good thing. No matter which side of the fence you sit on, I think is a good thing. And I actually had someone, it was very interesting. I saw someone being interviewed, a political analyst, that said, probably the best thing for Joe Biden is if the Republicans remain in control of the Senate, which seems counterintuitive. And the way he explained it was that Biden is more of a moderate, generally speaking. He did campaign on some far left things, but if there's a check and balance there and the Republicans control the Senate, Biden can lean on that to say, hey, I can't, to his most left supporters, he can say, hey, I can't get all this stuff through because we don't control the Senate. So it gives him a chance to be more moderate, which I think is generally more of what he generally has been. But that said, assuming that the Republicans keep the Senate, and even if they don't, I don't think, again, I think Biden, generally speaking, his campaign platform has been on, taxes. There's going to be some changes, and it will be, I anticipate, again, if everyone does what they say they were going to do, which, as we both know, doesn't always happen.
Not always.
I think it will be, I think it won't be as favorable for small business owners specifically as it has been the last 4 years. However, I don't think it'll be anything too extreme. I think the bigger impact will be on larger businesses and folks, excuse me, that are at the higher end of the income scale. And I've read a whole bunch of different pieces that analyze Biden's platform on business and taxes, and a lot of different sources. So I've read some left-wing sources, some right-wing sources, and some sort of third-party sort of, allegedly unbiased. And I think what I've come down to with, conglomerating all those together is that, again, I think generally speaking, what will happen is people in the higher tax brackets are going to have an increase in their taxes. When small businesses potentially are going to see a slight increase, but I think until you're up in the $20+ million business stratosphere, I think anything under 20 million should see not much of an impact. The corporates, I think one of the big things that he's run on is increasing the corporate tax rate. So for the large companies, Fortune 500 type companies, I would expect to see that. Now, the impact that could have is that you're going to have potentially some people losing their jobs, right? Because as corporate tax rates go up, they're going to have to cut expenses in order to pay the taxes, et cetera. And so those larger corporations could be looking for ways to decrease their expense base, which of course, in a lot of cases, one of their largest expense bases is their employee resource base. So, if anything, it could have an impact on unemployment. You could see more businesses moving more towards artificial intelligence, AI. You've already begun to see it. And it's interesting as a side note, actually as a sort of a tangent to that topic is, minimum wage. That is one of the things that I think will likely happen and will have the biggest impact on small businesses is if they pass a mandatory $15 an hour minimum on the minimum wage. That's going to have a massive impact on small business if they're able to get that through. Honestly, if I were a betting man, I would think, again, if I'm assuming that the Republicans will continue to hold the Senate, is that there'll be a compromise. I don't know that it'll end up being 15, but it could end up being, 12, let's say. I think in order to get that through, the Republicans maybe lean a little bit, Democrats lean a little bit, and they end up with that. But that could have a big impact on small businesses, depending on the type of business you have. If you have a professional firm and you're running a law firm, for example, probably not much of an impact because most of your people are probably making well above $15 an hour, $12 an hour, whatever it may be. Right. But if you have a small manufacturing company, let's say, and you're in a low cost area, and that's where it's going to have the biggest impact. And that's, sort of some of the Midwest and some of these smaller areas. New York City it's not going to have an impact because people at McDonald's make $15 an hour in New York City now. And, the Houstons, the Chicagos, the LAs, the San Franciscos, those folks are already making, because they have to, right? So it's not going to have much of an impact in those cities, but as they, grocery stores are going to have more and more self-checkout, right? They're going to be utilizing that more and more. Gosh, Brian, you go to, McDonald's nowadays, most McDonald's now, have essentially the self-checkout, same sort of thing. And the thing is people, I think, sort of take too much of a microcosm view of that. And they say, when I go to the grocery store, I'll never do self-checkout because I don't want to take someone's job. And I think, that's fine. You can do that, but then don't complain when milk is $4 or $5 a gallon, right? Because they're trying to cut expenses, and if they have the higher minimum wage, which people want higher minimum wage, but they don't want to do self-checkout. It's like, well, one kind of drives the other in a lot of cases because you've got these corporations. Let's say in this example, grocery stores, they need to lower their cost base, and if the minimum wage goes up to $15, and right now they're paying $10. You may say, $10 to $15, not a big deal. That's a 50% increase.
Yeah, over how many people, right?
Over how many people, exactly. And so, to keep their prices competitive, they have to look for ways, and their food costs aren't going to go down. As a matter of fact, wait, they're going to go up.
Yeah, right.
Because now
Exactly.
the suppliers are paying $15 an hour for a job that they may have been paying $8 or $10 an hour for. So again, you're going to have grocery stores in that scenario really starting to compress their expenses and think, where can we save? Well, the employee base is a way to save. How can we, frankly, they're going to look at how can we eliminate some of that? And maybe that, I have no idea what a self-checkout, scanner.
Technician.
Yeah. Well, even with
the actual device. Yeah.
But that, here's the thing. I mean, it sounds a little blunt and harsh, but that machine never calls in sick. That machine doesn't have daycare issues. That machine doesn't take smoke breaks. So that initial investment in that machine is, pays off over the long haul significantly. So again, I think people, when they look at things in just a microcosm and say, gosh, everyone should make $15 an hour. And some of those folks are also the ones that complain that they don't want to do self-checkout. And they complain if, the cost of milk or their groceries goes up, and, they all drive one another. This increased minimum wage, if you look at where it's been done, for example, in Seattle, it's been done. You look at the results of it, it's not good overall. People don't realize everything's going to go up. So yeah, now you make $15 an hour for, a minimum wage job, but now everything else goes up as well, right? Your cost of living goes up to sort of match that, because as I mentioned, even with the grocery store, their suppliers are going to now have to pay $15 an hour to get the food to the grocery store for you to buy. So it's all going to be a trickle down effect. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you're making more, you're making $15 an hour instead of 10 or 12, maybe, let's say, in that scenario. But now your grocery cost has gone up by 10%, and the cost of gas potentially, I guess gas is sort of insulated from it, but just the general cost of living is going to go up. I mean, think about the absolute trickle down effect. It's going to impact almost everything. If you live in an apartment, it's going to have an impact on you. And you say, well, Ken, how would it have that impact? Well, the maintenance guys who take care of the grounds and take care of all the maintenance around, fix your light and your this and your that. Now those guys may make more, easy for me to say. And so now the property owner is going to pass that down to you. Your rent's going to go up because now his costs are going up. So I think, again, a lot of people don't think about the full trickle down impact on that. So that's one of the things for sure I think that is most likely to happen and most likely to have the biggest impact on small business owners.
Well, I think one thing you said earlier, I think it may inferred about artificial intelligence. What I think this is doing for small business owners is forcing them to innovate in general more to keep up with the times, because you're not going to be able to, I don't want to not afford the skilled worker, but skilled labor is going to be more expensive.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. As far as innovation and artificial intelligence and things like that, I mean, think about it, and Brian, I think our ages are probably similar enough, and probably, I'm guessing most of your listeners wouldn't understand the reference, but, think of Blockbuster Video.
Yeah.
As far as innovation, right? Do you have any idea, and this is interesting because I did the research, because I actually was interviewed on a couple of TV shows about this, but Netflix, the guy who started Netflix, you'll never guess, Brian, why he started Netflix. Get this one, and you'll appreciate this because you probably had some Blockbuster experiences. He went to Blockbuster Video, turned in his video late, and had a $40 late charge, and got super ticked off and said, this is ridiculous. There has to be a better way. And he developed Netflix because of being ticked off about the late fees. And he said, I'll never have late fees. And people forget, especially some of the younger folks that might be listening.
Yeah.
Netflix started off as a streaming service.
Right.
It started off as DVDs. You would have you would get mailed DVDs, and you keep them as long as you want, but you couldn't get another one until you sent in, the one you had, but no late fees. And that's how it all started, that innovation. He said, gosh, this is a terrible model. Interestingly enough, just as a side note to the whole Blockbuster and innovation and sort of thinking ahead, is Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million.
I heard this.
And they turned it down and said, no, we're good. And I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was 4 years later, Blockbuster declared bankruptcy.
Wow. That's fast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and I use that example because I think at least for folks who are old enough to know what the heck Blockbuster
Yeah.
is and what it represented it shows the sheer importance of thinking ahead, not just from the pandemic and how, the new normal, as everyone likes to say, but it's super important. I don't want to get too far off the topic. I know we were talking about election results and those
Yeah.
impacts, but I think for innovation, as you mentioned, I think that's a great example. And it just shows how critical it is to be thinking ahead, not only because of the pandemic and things like that, but also potentially on what impact are the election results going to have, and how should you begin to start to think about that again. Minimum wage, or
Yep.
how can you automate some of the things that you do in your business, whether it's with AI or whatnot, but really thinking innovatively outside the box. I encourage business owners, all of them. I don't care what kind of business you have. And I'll tell you, I was guilty of this myself, is you have to take time at least every month to just completely shut down
Mhm.
everything and only think about strategic and innovation and things like that. We get so caught up in all of the weeds and everything of the everyday life and running the business and putting out fires and thinking very tactically, that all of a sudden you could look up and you're Blockbuster, your
Yeah.
Blockbuster Video. And it's like, holy crap, I didn't even think about this, right? And there may have been opportunities and signs, but you had your head down so far in the weeds that you never had an opportunity to do that. Again, I got this lesson, here I am, a strategic business partner, and I wasn't even doing it with my own businesses. And I'm like, holy crap, what the heck? But Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx, if
Yeah.
anyone's familiar with the undergarments, she said that once a quarter, she has thinking weekends. And she goes by herself, no family, no kids, no husband, no one else, 100% by herself. She said, I take a notepad and I take my laptop and I drive somewhere an hour, 2 hours away from my home, and I stay for the weekend. And all I do is think about, innovation and strategic ideas and initiatives for the future. What's this going to look like in 10 years? I want to make sure I'm staying out in front. She said she does that once a quarter. And I think about that. I mean, she's been moderately successful. I mean, she's the youngest female. Actually, she was the youngest female billionaire business
really?
owner until Kylie Jenner came along.
Oh, yeah. I remember. I
Yeah.
now remember that. Yeah.
But I think, again, I don't want to get too far off the election impact, but I think, the thing that ties that back in is thinking about these things, thinking about, okay, again, if the likelihood is that the minimum wage is going to increase, and whether it goes up to 10, 12, 15, whatever it may end up being, what does that mean for your business? Not just, if it gets passed in March, what's that mean for your business in April? What's that mean for your business in April of 2023?
Right.
What is 3 years impact of that? 2 years impact of that? What's that look like for your business? And then even further out, what things should you be investing in now to ensure that you don't get left behind, to where maybe some of your competitors have implemented some of the things and thought ahead, and then you find yourself 3 years down the road behind the 8 ball and really having a difficult time, working yourself out of a challenging situation.
Yeah, because it really, in my mind, it really doesn't matter what's happening in the world. It matters how I understand it and how I use it for the future, right?
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why I think it's good to take all of this in. I mean, again, election results being one of those things is, thinking about it. Because again, let's say that, staying on the whole minimum wage impact, let's say that gets passed at some point in 2021, Biden will be in office for 4 years. And so, or at least the Democrats will be controlling the White House for 4 years. That minimum wage, what are the chances, Brian? I mean, if you were a betting man, if the minimum wage goes up to $12 or $15 an hour in 2021, I don't care what happens in future elections and who controls what. What are the chances it's going to get knocked down?
Oh,
right?
Zero.
We're zero, right? The Republicans can hold everything and hold all the control. There's no way. It would be political nightmare for them to try to say, oh, we don't want to pay everyone $15 an hour. You're going to go back to 12. I mean, it's never going to happen. So once it's there, and it's only going to go up in the future, of course. So really start thinking about that, depending on the type of business you have. If you have a decent chunk of your employees that are in that range that are less than $15 an hour now, what impact is that going to have on you? You should have been running numbers already, honestly,
Yeah.
of let's assume I have to move everyone to a minimum of 15. And by the way, think about this other impact. Let's say, for example, that you have, I don't know, a quarter of your workforce that's below $15 an hour now, and you go, oh my gosh, I got to move them up. What about the people that are making 15 to 17? And they go, wait a minute, I've got a bit more experience and a better skill set than these people who just got moved up into my range. I need a raise as well now.
Yep.
Right. To make it commensurate, I need to be bumped up $3 an hour, $5 an hour. Now, what impact is that? How do you handle that situation?
And now we're getting like almost not exponential, but almost, I guess maybe almost exponential, because it's compounding, right? It's the $3 you gave from the guy from 12 to 15 is now, another $3 for the guy you had to move from 15 to 18 or whatever.
Yep. I mean, again, most small businesses are going to, let's say you run a small manufacturing company, you probably have a lot of people in that $10 to $20 range. That could be a really detrimental situation for them. So again, thinking about that, hey, temporarily, again, maybe you've thought about some automation, some new machinery, let's say, that automates some of the process, and you've not pulled the trigger on that. Maybe now's the time to make that investment. And if you have the wherewithal capital to do that, and make that investment now, so it's going to pay off for you, starting in 3 years and going forward into the future in that scenario. So you don't end up with, you've got, your average, let's say your average labor costs right now, to your point, Brian, if you've got people from 12 and you got to move them to 15 and 15 to 18, let's say your average cost now is 15. What's the impact going to be if the minimum wage goes to 15? Is your average now $20 an hour?
Yeah.
Well, again, that's a 33% increase. I mean, that's big. I mean, depending on the size of your company and the number of employees you have, that's a really big impact. So you got to start thinking about those things so you don't get left and caught behind, the 8 ball in that scenario.
Yeah, because I mean, even if I think about like profit margins, do I have enough profit margin built in my product? And if this is happening to me, what about my suppliers, right? And are they going to charge more, right? This is just like I don't want to say collateral damage, but it's a domino effect on things.
Yeah. You can bet that. I mean, again, as I was mentioning earlier with the grocery stores, your suppliers in a national, federal minimum wage increase, your suppliers, unless they're outside the United States, they're going to increase their costs, their charges to you. And again, you have to take that into consideration as well, because how much control do you have over that? Right? Probably minimal. I mean, you can rebid things and things like that, but everyone's going to be impacted in the same way, similar ways at least. And so, the impact of that is going to be huge. And depending on what industry you're in, so what is the price elasticity that your customers have? And again, not to get too much in economics and the weeds and all that, but depending if your product or service is very, another way of putting it is very cost sensitive, right? So a customer would leave you if they could get it for 10 cents cheaper down the street.
Right.
Holy crap. Now what, right? Your vendors are charging you more. Your employee costs have gone up. And if you can lose customers over 10-cent change in your price, you really need to start thinking about how you're going to, implement all this.
Yeah. Now you're getting into, hey, what's my overall business strategy, right? Because I can't be the low cost provider, right? I need to figure out a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, sometimes, and here's an option that's not, when I say this, it's going to sound really obvious, but I find far too many people don't consider it, is when you do that analysis, to your point, Brian, what's your strategy look like going forward in your model, you may find when you do that and you start to do some projections, you may say, you know what, these 3 products, we can't offer them at a competitive rate anymore in this environment. We got to cut them. And by the way, let's cut them now.
Right.
Why hold on? Let's start moving forward. Let's take the money we have invested in those products and let's create some new products that are more, that can still have a decent margin on them, that will be profitable 3 years from now and 5 and 10 years from now, at least as far as we can see, as opposed to holding on to, everyone says, oh my gosh, I provide this. I can't cut back on my products. If you can't offer a product at the profit margins you should be at in your industry, you got to cut it. You have to either figure out how you can offer it competitively and at the profit margin you need, or you have to cut it. I mean, there's really only 2 solutions, and not many people consider the latter. what happens is, what I've seen very often is they keep the products, and those products end up being what I call the silent business killer. And the silent business killer are products and services that you have that are actually unprofitable. And I call it silent because, of course, Brian, when I tell an owner that, the owner goes, Ken, why would I have a product or service that's unprofitable? Why would I do that? You don't realize you have it.
Exactly.
It's silent, right? And what happens even more often is that product or service is a high volume product for you. So you're selling more, your revenue, think about this, your revenue is going up because you're selling this thing like crazy, right? But you're losing money for every unit of that product that you sell. So your sales, your revenue is going up and you're losing more and more money, right? It seems completely counterintuitive. So as a business owner that doesn't understand the full financial model of their business, they look at it and they go, something's wrong. Like, is someone stealing from me? Like, is someone, stealing money? Because it just doesn't make sense. And more than likely, that's what it is. You have a silent business killer that's lurking in your business. And I see it all the time. Almost every business I've ever worked with has at least one of those products or services. So again, we go through the same exercise of how can we offer it more competitively? And if we can't, do we need to cut it? Or we continue to offer it, but we offer it at a higher price, and we only offer it just as almost like as a convenience, because it's such a complementary product to other things we offer. And if people are willing to pay that higher price for it, great. If they're not, that's okay too. We want to keep it in our product offering though, but you have to have a price at that appropriate margin. So
how important is it for in a time like we're in now? Like it's this change in the guard in our political kind of makeup, but then also layered on top of that is, we're in a pandemic. I was going to say we're at the end of it, but God knows, right?
Right.
So how important is it just to go through the exercise that you're talking about right now?
Oh, super important. I mean, what I would say is, not to sound negative, but you should have done it 6 months ago or more. Well, actually, I was beginning to position my clients in like the April timeframe of 2019. For an economic downturn. So here's the funny part, Brian. So I'm talking with my clients and I'm like, hey, we're always sort of positioning ourselves and building a strong balance sheet, but there's an economic downturn coming. And it's funny, my clients are all, to a T, every single one of them was like, oh my gosh, Ken, you're paranoid, and I said, look, we've had 10 years of unhindered prosperity, and I'm not being negative or, whatever. It's just part of the business cycle. Right?
Cycles. That's it.
It goes up, it goes down. 10 years straight. I mean, a typical business cycle is 5 years. If you look at the average over the last 100 years or so, it's about 5 years. You have 5 years of prosperity, you have a dip, and then things go back up for 5 years, and then you have a dip. And we had 10 years. And so I said that it is coming. We have to make sure we're prepared, because not all of our competitors will be prepared. And that'll give us an opportunity to be able to do a lot of different things and grow during that time. And that's exactly what's happened. So fast forward, we get into this year, March, April of this year, my clients are like, oh my gosh, you're like freaking Nostradamus. Like, I'm like, hold on. I had no idea that a pandemic was going to, induce this economic downturn. But, and we were positioning to be ready that a downturn would start on July 1st of 2020. So even with that, we were sort of not completely out in front of it. But, I've got several clients that are, and I know I hesitate to say this because I know some of your listeners will be like, really? But I have several clients that this year in 2020, despite the pandemic, are going to have a record-breaking year.
Awesome.
Because we were positioned and, two in particular, their competitors did not make it through. And so it gave us a business opportunity as well as an opportunity to save jobs and create opportunity. So their competitors didn't make it through. Well, now they have a customer base that needs serviced, that we can service. And now, because we're servicing that and we have higher volume, we need to hire. So we're hiring during a pandemic, right? Crazy. Wow. But we're saving those jobs. So now we can tap into that experienced, seasoned, labor market, and those people don't lose their jobs.
Right.
So it was a huge win-win, especially for two of my clients that are going to, and the one that's having a record-breaking year this year, last year was his best year ever. And he's been in business for 18, 19 years now. So,
wow.
It's not like a startup that, you're having a lot of growth in the initial stages. So super important to be, again, it's that strategic vision. It's thinking ahead and what's that going to look like and making sure you're properly positioned for that. And so, yeah, a lot of the things that we're doing right now, I'm doing the last 6 weeks of the year, are doing the same thing, thinking of 2021, at least 2021. And actually we're running projections out through the end of 2022.
Oh, wow.
Of what does that look like? Running cash projections and trying to see, frankly, again, especially with the few clients I have that are having record-breaking years, we're in a position to where it's like, well, how are we going to, what kind of tax strategies can we implement?
Right.
So we can get killed on taxes this year.
Exactly.
What are the things that we can invest in the business, lower our tax base at the same time, that will help us just propel into 2021 and beyond and have massive growth. And so that's what we're looking at now. For those, again, very fortunate to be in that position. I've told both those the two owners that are having record-breaking years, I said, don't tell all your business owner friends that you're having a record-breaking year. Like they might, drop kick you or something.
Exactly, right? Exactly. That's great. I mean, that's awesome to hear. I love hearing that because I believe that with proper strategies, proper planning, just being honest with yourself and looking into the future, you can achieve things like that. It's, what frustrates me is when I know good people can do that and they don't, because I know where they can go. So,
yeah. And again, I think, Brian, my experience has been, it's not necessarily, it's more so that they're so wrapped up in running their business day to day, that they just don't take the time, not that they're being negligent in any way, shape, or form. It's just they're not thinking, and especially, again, given the 10 years of unhindered growth and prosperity we've had in the United States, after a while, you become, for lack of a better term, fat, dumb, and happy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everything's great. Everything's going to continue to go up, right? We'll continue to increase sales every year. And it's just not the reality of, the business cycle. So, but that is so important is having that strategic vision. And I learned a lot of this in the corporate world. When I was at JP Morgan Chase in the corporate world, and we built a very strong balance sheet. And when the 08-09 economic crisis hit, at Chase, we were able to buy Washington Mutual and we were able to buy Bear Stearns at deep discounts,
right,
and save them from catastrophe,
right,
and be able to step in and serve their customer base. And it was a great opportunity for us as a company at the time. And so again, I saw that firsthand and was involved with a lot of that stuff and some of the due diligence around that. So that's really been ingrained in my head from my corporate days. And so I'm very thankful and grateful that I've been able to sort of use that now with what I do to help some of these owners. And again, there are, some of my clients, again, they think I'm like Nostradamus and like predicting the future and all this other stuff. I'm like, no, it's not really that cool, but it's really just, again, we just don't have the time. We don't take the time often enough to really think ahead and what that looks like.
Well, this was great. And I appreciate you taking the time to really pass on the mindset, right? I know we got in the weeds some places, but what I really heard you express was this mindset on how to look at things, because the situation is going to be different for everybody who's going through this and listening or watching. So I'm grateful you passed that along. So why don't you go ahead and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you if they want to reach out and learn more about what you do or just learn more of your insights.
Yeah, go out to MrBizSolutions.com. That's our primary website. You can find a lot of stuff there. I've got a YouTube channel, Mr. Biz. Honestly, follow us on social media. I've got I'm on almost all the social media channels. If you look for Mr. Biz, you'll find me. But our YouTube channel's got, I don't know, over 100 videos most of the videos are like 4 to 6 minutes long on specific topics. So, and we have playlists. So you can go out and say, for example, I need help with cash flow. You can go out to our cash flow playlist and see all of our cash flow videos and, pick out the ones that are most pertinent to the situation you're in, hopefully be helpful for you. And I'd be thankful to have people following and getting some free content and hopefully helpful content.
Cool. And anybody listening or watching, if you didn't write all that stuff down, don't worry. Wherever you're listening or watching this, you'll find all of Ken's social media links. We'll share those. So don't worry, and just start looking around after you are watching or seeing this. So, well, again, Ken, appreciate your time, man. This was awesome. And thanks for everybody for tuning into this episode of the Seize Your Business podcast. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Brian McDonald from OnPurpose Growth, and everybody take care. Thanks, Ken.
Yep. Thank you.
The following BLTV program is brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Please enjoy.